quit that.
Greetings, Legionnaires, and welcome to Deep Dive Zone, a Knuckles the Echidna reread series for fans of all shapes and sizes. I'm your host, Devin, joined as always by my fellow indoctrinates, Lauren and Bruce, and today we have a special scenario on our hands, because the dam has finally broken and all of Ken Pender's creative juices are flowing out into the city, drowning people. It's like Sonic Adventure, but the dialogue is even worse.
That's disgusting, Devin.
I mean, this
Well, you don't want to hear about his juices?
No.
This doesn't really count as like the floodgates either, because like this is technically a mini series still.
True. This isn't the full this is the Knuckles series, but it's not being marketed as that yet.
Yes, at this point in the comic, they still thought they were going to be cancelled by issue 50, so technically we are starting with Knuckles the Dark Legion #1 here.
Wait.
Technically this was the second Knuckles miniseries, but it just kept going after that.
Wait, that's the thing? They thought they were going to be canceled at 50?
Yeah, I didn't
that's
know
why
that
50
either.
is designed as a climax to the series.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
Spoilers
good
for next week, I
background.
guess. We've got some Sonic comics, but Knuckles is definitely in focus right now. Both
Yeah,
because
Knuckles
we're
is the
starting with
meat
him
of
on
the
timeline.
episode.
Both because we're starting with him on the timeline, and because from here on out, we're going to fairly often have 3-issue arcs of Knuckles.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that the comic is just called Knuckles. It's nothing stupid. Like just
Yeah.
Knuckles, because that's who he is. He doesn't need.
Yeah, it's not
titles.
Sonic's friendly nemesis again.
Exactly.
No, that's gone, yeah.
Thank God.
Our story for this issue is called Army of Darkness, which, yes, they really went for that one. Written by Penders and Taylor / Fulop, of course, and drawn by Manny Gallen and Andrew Papoy. I think Papoy is the inker, but it just lists them as artist, so. The future and past collide as Knuckles battles a mysterious faction of technologically augmented echidnas in the present, while his ancestor Steppenwolf battles them in the past.
What kind of name is Steppenwolf?
I think so. I'm trying to remember, but all of the Guardian lineage, or most of them at least, Ken Penders likes to name them after philosophers.
I see. Okay.
So Locke is named after John Locke.
Right. I'm trying to figure out who Steppenwolf is, though.
I assume it's probably the same name as whatever the DC villain Steppenwolf is named after, which may be a philosopher, but also might not be. I don't know.
Are you sure he isn't just named after the rock band?
Was the DC villain named after the rock band?
It was formed in 1967, so maybe.
Entirely possible. In retrospect, they were probably both named after the book. Well, that's a mystery for another day. For this day, we're starting off with Locke here, just kind of walking through his lab, and is suddenly like, oh shit, here's the Dark Legion, they're just here.
It's a little anticlimactic.
Yeah, I mean, when he's completely familiar with the menace, it takes off a little bit of the intrigue and buildup.
Yeah, kinda.
I guess that's maybe supposed to be a portal they're walking through in the background, but the lack of color on the screens makes it hard to tell.
Yeah, looks like it.
Of course, it's not as simple as simply establishing that threat and then showing them off. We also have to go through more of the Edmund and Dimitri recap stuff.
Right. So
Yeah.
before we do that, I have to say that I kind of started to like Archimedes a little bit, but then he betrayed me by doing this whole I gotta keep Knuckles in the dark nonsense. That I realized he's actually allied with Locke, so darn.
Yeah.
Darn. Loses points.
It's also very flimsy, because it's like, they're a giant army with UFOs and tanks. How is he not supposed to see them?
I don't know. But for the
You
benefit of
know.
the readers, yeah, we get to see what's going on in those flashbacks. And I must say, I didn't really think about oh yeah, I just was like, of course, high-tech society gets almost destroyed by some emerald god, and then they're like, yeah, we'll get rid of our technology. But no, actually, people wouldn't like that. That I'm actually surprised. That's logical.
Yeah.
There's a logical point to expand upon.
Yeah, it is.
It makes perfect sense that not everybody would want to give up all of their stuff, because this society, allegedly at least, ran for many hundreds of years with it. My issue is less that that's unrealistic, and more just that Edmund is still presented as being in the right for wanting to get rid of all technology forever.
Yeah, I mean, there's still plenty of ridiculous situations just to make super ramped up tension, because if somehow these scenarios were playing out, yeah, people would be at their throats.
Right.
Yeah, but we do, while Knuckles is dodging the Dark Legion for the most part, like, Knuckles is not doing anything in the present for most of the flashback parts. It's mostly just showing off that, oh, they're dangerous and scary, while we learn that the Dark Legion was basically, yeah, they were established as an anti-Guardian, anti-Edmund faction led by... Actually, I don't know if it explicitly states that Menaker started them at this point, but,
No, that's a plot twist later, actually.
okay, well, we'll get to it then. I guess I'm spoiling for 15 minutes from now. I think the thing is that the Dark Legion are... Yeah, no, they're so, like, obviously evil, even though I think that their motivation is pretty sound.
Well, it's just like, I mean, I'm used to it in these comics at this point, but it's just dialed up to a ridiculous extent. I mean, yeah, they could have just been like, let's, gather as a group of people who won't stand for this and, like, basically stop the government from doing this. But instead, like, no, we will don robes and we will, like, conquer, and, like, it's absurd.
Yeah.
Also, let me just say that the Dark Legion members, like, they're echidnas in robes, but 99% of the time, they're drawn in the simplistic style, where they just look like red humanoids, which is fine for the most part, but later they get, like, bopped around and stuff, and I can't help but just see them as not even echidnas at all, because they keep that drawing style. It's just...
Yeah, even
it's
when
just
you
weird.
should be able to see their faces.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they look like weird aliens. We do at least get, some teamwork as Knuckles and the Chaotix are uniting to help fight the threat. Which, SBO, Mighty, and Charmy are still mostly, like, not very characterized, and Vector just gets his vernacular, I guess. In terms of the actual events, it's mostly just fighting with flashbacks interspersed.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which does keep it a little bit interesting. I like how like switch between characters who have the same poses as, like, characters in the present. They get a little creative with the transitions.
Yeah, Knuckles' jump and Steppenwolf's landing are kind of the same parallel.
Right, but at the end of the day, there's not really a whole lot that happens.
Right.
No, our cliffhanger is basically that some Legionnaires try to shoot down Steppenwolf in the past, and, like, oh, his thing explodes, it looks like he dies, and then the leader of the Dark Legion is revealed to be Kragging, which is a hilarious name. It sounds like someone just, like, choking as they're trying to say it.
It sounds like a Klingon name.
Yes, it does. It's weird because it looks like a big reveal, but he's just some red echidna with a robot eye and robot arm.
Well, yeah, it feels like they were stepping up a big reveal for it to be Enerjack, or I guess Dimitri.
Yeah,
well,
no, it's just some dude.
Yeah, Dimitri's still in space, so...
I guess the question would be, are we supposed to have understood up to this point that the Dark Legion were echidnas? It's like, you should be able to see that they're being built in the flashback. If it were the reveal that he was an echidna, I would get it.
Yeah, that would be a better one.
That would be why it would make sense, actually, that they obscure the faces the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's the point, because it becomes pretty obvious pretty quickly if you're following the flashbacks. Like, there's no reason that it would be a big reveal at the end.
Maybe if you were a kid.
I mean, to be honest, because of the way they were drawn, I was literally like, is this like a mistake? Or are they just drawing them weird on purpose? So I was a little unsure. So this, I was like, okay, yeah, no, they're just drawing them weird. But anyway.
Yeah, so it's a very simple story, I guess, is what it is. And the flashbacks make it seem more complicated than it is, but it is pretty straightforward.
It's just set up.
Yeah,
I'll say Manny Gallen is definitely improving on the art front.
Yeah, the art in this issue is pretty solid.
Yeah, and that's going to be actually a theme. I think the Knuckles comics generally looked more consistently good than Sonic for a lot of the time.
What I've read so far, I think I have to agree, at least for what we've read of the Sonic comics as well.
I'm not sure I can exactly say the same for Spazion's cover on Knuckles #2 here. It's not that it's bad exactly, it's just that Steppenwolf looks extremely old because he's got his stupid eyebrows, and his mouth makes it look like he's got no teeth, like an old man.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, it is a little strange looking.
The eyebrows just need to be a different color. That would fix a lot.
Probably. Anyway, Sins of the Fathers. Same people, I'm not going to say it every time. Knuckles convenes with Kragging, who seeks his knowledge of the Chaos Emerald Chamber. Knuckles refuses to give up the info and leads the Chaotix in a battle against the Legion. Meanwhile, in the past, Edmund is killed by the Legion, leaving the responsibility of guarding Angel Island to his son Steppenwolf.
So I was prepared for echidna politics, but ant politics? That's a level I wasn't expecting.
Yeah. There is a lot of ant commerce going on. Or not commerce, but ant council.
Ant lore.
Yeah. Before that, I like the part where they're being led to the Dark Legion camp, both because I like whenever we get two-page spreads, but also because I love this company cookout that they're having in the background.
So this happened in like the other Knuckles comics too, with like the way the soldiers were chanting. These stories are generally more serious than the comics are, at least historically. They're transitioning a little bit, the Sonic comics. But yeah, every so often there's just something like that, and
yeah, it's weird.
I think if they weren't presented as the super dark evil guys, it would actually almost, humanize them a bit. But yeah,
a little bit, yeah.
Instead, it's just a weird, unintentional... Well, I guess not unintentionally, but unfittingly funny moment.
Mm.
I mean, generally, the randos in the Dark Legion are actually shown to be pretty like they get beat up really easily. They're not really as tough as they're dressed. So I guess that solidifies it a little bit. Maybe this is actually more fitting, and it's just Kragging who's like, we must be the Dark Legion. The rest of them are like, fine, we'll dress up in robes, but really they'd rather
real
not.
Life.
I'm just here, they're just there to have friends.
Basically.
I joined the Dark Legion because I wanted to keep my cell phone. That would really kind of make me get it, honestly. If not for the fact that they still, do a terrorism here and there. But,
okay, yeah. That's unfortunate, but
Anyway, yeah, the ants have a council where they decide how to guide the echidna race.
Master manipulators.
I don't why do they care that much? It's really weird. I guess it's because echidnas historically are like anteaters, and so this is their symbiotic relationship. I don't know.
On a different note, Knuckles gets in a bit of a scuffle because Kragging's like, "Oh yes, let's talk. I'll release you," and then immediately Knuckles jumps him, which is just perfect. But then
very much in character.
But then in the battle, he's like, "It's crunch time," which he mentioned that last issue. Is that just his new catchphrase? Why does he need a catchphrase? What is this joke?
Yeah, Penders really wanted to make that a catchphrase. It's not good. It's real bad.
Crunch time.
I'm less put off by that, and more put off by the fact that he knocks out a Legionnaire and steals his outfit while saying, "Good thing we echidnas are all roughly the same size. I'd hate to think how I'd pull this off if we weren't." That makes me so angry, because the lack of diversity in echidna designs, and other characters, but mostly echidnas, is the biggest problem with the look of these comics, and now you're making it textual.
Also, it is so jarring to see the echidna he stole the robe from right next to him, like all mechanized and stuff. It's so glaringly wrong the way they're drawn when they have the robes on.
Maybe the cybernetics, project red and yellow light.
Well, yeah, because it looks like it's now it looks more like it's just a mask or something.
It really does.
Well, and it still wouldn't work because they still have red hands until he bops them, in which their hands turn to black gloves.
Right. What? That's...
Anywho, the past storyline is basically just Edmund getting hunted down by the Legion and trying to beat them, and then just, getting shot immediately.
A bit out of his depth, I'd say.
We were talking about power scaling last time. I never know how strong a given Pender's character is supposed to be, because they all tend to die in really uninteresting or unremarkable ways if anybody dies.
Yeah, well, it's all just to, build the story, because he's like, oh, we have to have the next generation do it, because that's a parallel with, Knuckles and his dad and all that. So, yeah, he kind of just dies because he has to.
Where's the reveal that Edmund is still alive and just manipulating his son?
A long line of people being manipulated.
Yeah. Anyway, Knuckles saves the Chaotix, who were kidnapped in a different place, and they got a tank.
I like that Espio was like, "It's a trick," and he's like, "You bet it is."
What else do you gotta do?
I don't think I've ever seen the word doofuses actually written out. I don't know why, that just stands out to me.
Actually, it's written wrong. There
Is
shouldn't be
it?
two S's, I don't think. I'm gonna have to look that up.
I believe you are correct, because the word doofus normally only has one S.
Doofuses.
Interesting.
We get back to our third plot line, back with Locke, and then like the ancient walkers and Athair show up, and they're like, well, we're not going to tell you anything. And I'm like, yes, sweet retribution for the way that you treat Knuckles, not telling him anything.
Well, Locke gets double trouble, because Athair, remember, is not Locke's father. He's his grandfather. So
Right.
we're eventually going to get introduced to Saber, who does the same thing to Locke, as he's also doing it to Knuckles.
I didn't actually want that.
Well, regardless, our flashbacks show that the ants train Steppenwolf to be the ultimate super good super guardian of Angel Island, and they even build him a high-tech super base called Haven.
Can someone explain to me how he has time for all that when Dark Legion is like moving? Like they don't seem to have a whole lot of plotting, really. They're just like, all right, everyone ready? Let's take over.
Yeah, they're an extremist group who isn't operating on any kind of long game. They just want to cause trouble enough to not take away technology and maybe rule the world.
Oh yeah, no, totally. They're like, oh, we're gonna have technology. Oh boy, howdy, will we have technology? We'll use great technology to take over everything. So technology will always be here.
Yeah.
The end of this issue is really weird because Mighty like pushes down a tree to stop Kraggok's possession of tanks, but then Kraggok just sets the forest on fire by shooting it, and so a stampede of minor characters comes barreling through, and that's the cliffhanger?
Yeah, so most of those people, I'm like, okay, they're still on the floating island. Can someone explain to me how Renfield Rodent is there? He was arrested, and I would think he wouldn't be imprisoned on the floating island, but probably, in like the Freedom Fighters prison or something.
I don't even know why cops were on the Freedom Island. I don't even know why cops were on the floating island in that special, because Angel Island doesn't have any kind of central governance right now. So who are those guys? Did they fly them in from fucking Nuthole?
My assumption was that they were police officers that happened to be there because everyone was visiting, to see like the cool new theme park that had opened on the floating island, and that's why they were there.
Maybe.
Makes about as much sense as anything.
Police for what? I don't even know if Nuthole has those.
Well, see, I didn't bring that up, but it doesn't really make sense for there to be a police force in this era of the comics, because supposedly everyone should be rogue or like underground, because Robotnik, just attacks anyone who isn't sneaky or, somehow powerful enough to hold their own, which I guess like a mogul or something, but he's also sneaky. I don't know. I can't think of anyone that would fall in that second category, but anyway.
Yeah, very weird. And we continue all that into Knuckles number 3, and I like this cover. I don't have complaints about this one like I did with the last one. It's just Knuckles punching Kraggok's arm, maybe?
Yeah, looks like it.
I guess he's probably blocking is what it is.
Yeah. The only thing
makes more sense.
is I think that's supposed to be Mount Fate in the background, but it doesn't feature in the story, I don't think.
No it doesn't.
It's translucent, which maybe means that it's the shadow of Mount Fate looming over stuff because it's Dimitri's fault. I don't know. They just went with what looked cool.
Yeah, no.
The story is Blood is Thicker. Same people, obviously. Knuckles sends the Dark Legion packing, while Steppenwolf learns that Dimitri's son Menaker was their founder. He defeats the initial uprising, but knows they are not the last.
So the first page in the story proper has the exact same image of the people running from the fire, but it's been distorted, which I've not seen lazy reuse like that in these comics yet.
That's rough.
I think that more than anything, I was distracted from that. I didn't notice that on initial viewing. I was distracted by their plan here, which is to have all these people that are running away from a forest fire and block them with a giant tree. You're gonna kill them!
Yeah, what are they doing? Are they supposed to like jump over it or
I
something?
assume the plan is to try and control the crowd.
Yeah, by trapping them into the giant wall.
Well, okay, that's not the best way to do it, but like, I assume the plan is to like, we need to do this in an orderly fashion. I don't know.
I don't know.
It looks odd.
Well, and their solution is equally odd, which is to have Vector blow music out of his earphones to put out the fire.
Yeah, how loud are those headphones?
I mean, they make a big point out of the fact that his headphones are like super powerful, and Charmy's even like, "Oh wow, he should really talk about how he got those headphones sometime." Which Vector Solo's backstory coming up? Question mark? I don't know, but yeah,
You technically can, I think, put out a fire with a sound wave, but this would also be loud enough to fucking liquefy his head, let alone give him hearing damage.
Well, so I'm willing to assume that he doesn't always listen to his music that loud.
No, you have to listen to everything on max volume. That's the rule.
I mean, that's what I do, but you know.
I mean, if you're a cool guy with headphones in any fictional media, can you not say that those guys are not always on max volume? Like, that's an archetype.
There.
I guess Penders is breaking cliches after all.
I mean, these are a bunch of like wacky characters with crazy powers, so I wouldn't be surprised if Vector's ears are just like super resistant to that sort of thing.
Sure.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess he doesn't have visible ears, so that might be part of it.
That could help.
That's true.
So wait, he just hears it through his skull, I guess?
I mean, sound waves are just vibrations.
I don't know if we could follow this to its logical conclusion. I don't know if it makes any sense.
Back in the past, good old Steppenwolf is like talking to the council, and they're like just completely furious and irrational, and he's like, "I'll turn you in to them." One of the dudes is like, and he's like, "Fine, do it." And he's like, "Okay, yeah, I can't follow through on that." Like, what are with these people?
Yeah, this entire scene is kind of bonkers because, they're trying to figure out what to do. Steppen walks in and is like, "Hey, we can do something new." And they're like, "No, no!" Immediately they're jumping to, "We gotta kill you. You're the problem." Which this is just some guy to them. Like, I guess they're blaming him for Edmund, and they're blaming Edmund for the Dark Legion.
The echidnas seem like, while they're clearly intelligent, they're also like seem to be very superstitious as well. So it's like
They come off to me as one of those hyper advanced societies that has just become so comfortable in their ways that the moment anything comes to shake it up, everything falls to pieces.
yeah.
Like Time Lords.
Yes.
I do actually like the part of this where the guy's pointing his gun at him, and Steppenwolf is like, "For I would give my life for you and yours," and that immediately makes the guy like break down in tears. And I like the panel of him with the teeny tiny text that says "No." I can't help but read it like that. He also doesn't say what to do. He just like gives an inspired speech, and they act more rational.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty helpful.
I mean, yeah.
But back in the present, they are heading for the Legion Tower.
So the one thing I'm a little not clear on about the Legion so far, is this the same Legion from the flashbacks, or is this another group that took the name Dark Legion, or is this just like basically an actual direct ancestor of the original Dark Legion?
So we're going to find that out, is that there is a reason why we have the Legion hundreds of years in the past and the Legion now, and where they came from, but we don't find out as of this.
Okay. So, because my theory would be, if this is not the same Dark Legion, but another group with similar ideals that took the name Dark Legion, then maybe the original Dark Legion built this. But since I don't know for sure, that's all I'm going to say.
Not enough theory given the current information, I would say.
Right.
Anyway, so they crash a Legion rally in the Great Hall. I don't know what they need a rally for exactly. They all seem pretty dedicated on their own.
It seems like they bounce between, we'll go and ravage someplace, and then we'll go talk about how great we are with our plans, and we'll go ravage another place. That's just how they roll.
Oh, so this is the post-ravaging talk about ourselves being great moment.
Basically.
Yeah.
All right. Kraggok's got a Chaos Emerald.
For some reason.
Did he steal it from the chamber? I don't even know.
Yeah.
They don't like grab it later, do they? It kind of looks like it might even just be a hologram. Like he could just be talking about how we need to get the Chaos Emerald.
I actually have no idea.
It's not very obvious.
It would make sense if they're saying we need to get the Chaos Emerald.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter anyway, since that's not really what the rest of the issue does. We get a past rally of the same thing, and the guy gets unmasked, and it's Menaker because and we saw him being sinister in the first issue, but he's got a weird like evil Spock beard now.
Because that's what you do when you turn evil.
Damn right.
Wait, I'm sorry, I'm being stupid. We totally see how this happened is because we have this whole rally that Steppenwolf goes to. Menaker reveals himself, and Steppenwolf seals them in an alternate dimension.
Okay, but I thought you were alluding to another detail that I'm not going to spoil about this alternate dimension. But you're right. Given that, they're probably descendants.
Right, they're okay.
Yeah, it has been a bit, though not as long as it could be.
Yeah.
That's a very stupid way to explain that. Anyway, so there's some cycle of violence stuff going on here. That's the point, is that even though Menaker is gone, they're not gone for good. And I guess that's what it would be, is that you could just assume that they're, like, dead, and that this Legion is just, more loyalists. Because I don't even remember how Kragging and Dimitri are related, if they're related. I don't fucking know. The family trees are terrible in this series.
So they get sealed away, right? Because Steppenwolf can just use chaos powers without a Chaos Emerald because he's just cool like that.
Magic.
I really like the way these past plots kind of just wrap themselves up, at the snap of a finger, just because they need to be done.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it, because you'd think that it would be, you have to infuse yourself with chaos energy in one way or another, but he just kind of does it. Maybe there's something about being designated a guardian by the ants or by the emerald, maybe? But all they say in the previous one is just like, oh, you gotta believe, son. So is it like the Force? Actually, no, I know it's exactly like the Force, but...
In the present here, we see Locke can do, like, the same thing, apparently. So yeah, if you're a guardian, you just get that. Cool.
Well, but that's even more frustrating, because I know later plot points, which is that Locke experimented on himself for chaos powers. So whatever, they weren't thinking that hard when they wrote.
Yeah, it's almost like the writers didn't think that far ahead.
They're making this up as they go along. So everybody beats up the Legion, but Kragging gets away, and that's kind of it. Knuckles just poses dramatically, and we're like, yay!
Yeah, pretty much.
I also like that they show the escape tube slides that Kragging must have gone down, and Knuckles is like, oh, I can't figure out which one it is. And then he just turns the other way and leaves because the place is collapsing. Doesn't even try to chase him.
Yeah, it seems kind of un-Knuckles-like now that you put it that way.
And, yeah, that's it.
That's the story. That's the wrap.
So
pretty much.
I get what they were going for, I think, but I don't think it quite coalesced into something super coherent, because I think it's hard to figure out what is meant to be represented by each side here. Like, is the Legion supposed to be literally technology? Are they radical technological progression? Are they consumerists, maybe? Is it about material possessions?
Yeah, so we saw the one unrobed
the Legionnaire.
Yeah, the Legionnaire, and they're all borged out, which makes me think that maybe there's something like Borg. They want more than just the use. Yeah, transhumanism. They want something more than just the use of technology. They want to become one with technology.
I guess, but that so flies in the face of a lot of other stuff in Sonic as a property, because, we have fucking Bunny, who we love, who is a hero, is a hero in part because she is saddled with technology she didn't ask for in her body.
Right. She's made the best of it.
Yeah, I think it's more like in spite of a bad situation than because of it.
I guess. So if you choose to be a cyborg, that makes you evil? I don't know.
Yes. according to these comics, the way I read them anyway.
I
I
guess.
guess it's just that, with Robotnik, it's like he loves controlling people. He thinks nature is lame,
Right.
so he wants it to be robotic. That's all you need. With the Legion, it's like we want to be the robots and also take over the world just because that's who we are. Haha.
Well, no, I think it's a mistake to try to relate this to the greater Sonic story. I would
Yeah.
just take this as it's presenting itself, and obviously it's about, like, technology going too far, basically. It dates back way to the whole Archimedes and an Enerjack plot line. That was the whole thing that catapulted this off.
True.
So I think that's
But
all
even
it is.
that mixes the metaphors, because Enerjack isn't really technological. He's just Chaos Emerald magic, which they use to beat the Legion at other points. And also Edmund is presented as like a fucking like anarcho-primitivist maybe, but they're non-committal because look at Haven, which is this techno base where you get trained to be a guardian.
Well, I mean, suddenly I'm going back and thinking to the greater Sonic plot, even though I said you shouldn't do that. And there was a bit from the Freedom Fighters during Mecha Madness where Rotor was like, should we really turn Knuckles into a robot to fight Mecha Sonic? Doesn't that just make us as bad as Robotnik? So the thing is, the problem is that there's no hesitation at all from the echidnas that use, technology and all that. But I do think it's a similar situation.
I think they just didn't see it for the nuanced conflict it should have been in the case of the Dark Legion. Anyway, so bit of a mixed bag for the first arc, I would say.
A little bit, yeah.
It kind of just feels like it comes and goes. It has a similar vibe, in my opinion, to the Enerjack series. Although I think it's a little more satisfying in its conclusion.
A little bit, yeah.
Just in that they beat them?
In the Enerjack plotline, it was like, oh, he loses just because he has to. In this one, it's like, at least, Locke is like, oh, I'll help him with my cool stuffers. And
yeah, everybody worked together.
And and the Chaotix do some sneaky sneaks and aren't just like there for comedy and drama
to save.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Well, let's keep that in the backdrop for now and move on to Sonic the Hedgehog number 45 here. Told you we still had some Sonic comics tonight.
I like how Moby's back. I bet you were really missing them.
I'm sure lots of kids wrote in about him.
Probably.
He's holding the logo. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, that's kind of fun.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I like little creative bits of art. But yeah, I really didn't expect issue number 32 to be important enough to need a recap later.
Well, frankly, it still isn't for the most part, but it does indeed have some amount of relevance. The first story here is Gorilla Thriller, written by Angelo De Cesare. This must be one of his last works, I think. And drawn by Dave Monach. Snively pilots an eco-destroyer mech through the Great Jungle, but Sonic and Rotor are captured by gorillas and unable to stop his rampage. It's up to the Freedom Fighters and the returning caveman Moby to defeat the deadly device.
So I think this has been touched on before, although I don't remember. I love that at the beginning here, when Robotnik and Snively are talking about plans, that Robotnik's like, no, we can't go to the jungle because I'm terrified of it. That is just great. Yeah. The idea that he's afraid of like natural jungles.
Right.
And that's why he destroys them.
I think that must have been in the King Kong comic.
Potentially.
Maybe?
I don't remember. I feel like it's come up before, but I always like when they do that.
I'm pretty sure Robotnik's dislike or fear of forest areas has come up before.
And Sonic probably doesn't help.
True.
No.
In any case, the majority of this comic is, it's Sonic and Rotor been kidnapped by gorillas, which is a really hard thing to say phonetically. Like, you can read it fine when it's written out on a screen, but it's like, what do you mean, double gorillas? Do they have two sets of heads, arms, and legs, maybe? But it's just antics for the most part. Sonic tries to, like, sell some of their own guns back to them, I think.
Yeah. It kind of just jokes for a while before the plot gets to come and try to eat the jungle. but I do kind of enjoy it a bit. I like to have like a pairing between Sonic and Rotor, like particularly. They don't get to like work with each other on their own very often, so that's kind of neat
That's
character
true.
dynamic. And then I also like that for once, Sonic actually can't get out of trouble on his own. He can't just do some stupid thing. He tries, but he actually has to be rescued by the Freedom Fighters because he's part of a team. Gosh darn it.
Well,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I guess that's the thing, is that I do have a soft spot for Rotor's stories in general, because even though Rotor is not like my favorite character, he is easily the most overlooked of the Freedom Fighters, I would say, even by fans, and I think that's just because his design is the most unconventional out of them.
Yeah.
Are you excluding Dulcie because they don't show up as often?
Oh, I didn't even fucking count Dulcie. No, Dulcie deserves it.
I agree.
Anyway, but yeah, the Freedom Fighters show up with Moby. They have a big battle. Moby is a weird case, because, like, other than being really strong, I wouldn't say that he has much of a super intentional function here.
So it's weird because they went through all that trouble to recap it and feature him on the cover, but he's just kind of there. I mean, it makes logical sense. They're in the jungle. He's there. He would
Sure.
help, but he doesn't play a huge, bigger part than anyone else.
No.
Yeah.
I would also say, we've talked about Dave Monnick's art plenty. I would say that I think it must be the inking in this issue that is particularly bad, because it looks really scratchy for a lot of it.
Yeah, this is compared to the Three Knuckles comics we've read tonight, this is not a very great looking comic.
It's just hard to read for a lot. There's so much black on
Yeah.
everything. But yeah, no, inoffensive story, I would say. Nothing particularly wrong with it,
Yeah.
but not like the most exciting thing.
I think it's crazy that the way they take down the Eco Destroyer is Sonic's like, oh, I'll just go inside of it and like loosen a bunch of bolts. But he goes in like, the way that has like, blades and stuff. Imagine that had gone wrong. Sheesh.
Yeah, well, if their blades big enough to cut down giant palm trees, they're probably big enough for someone like Sonic to jump through. That's the sort of thing that you would see in a Sonic game, if I'm honest.
Okay,
Yeah.
if it was active and they showed that, that would make sense. But they're like, no, he can't even turn it on because you'll just die. So that wasn't the picture I was getting.
We do actually have a second comic for this comic. Second story, that is. Which is Knuckles Quest 3, A Land of Dark, A Night of Virtue. Written by Penders and Kent Taylor, who is Scott Fulop, and drawn by Penders. Knuckles locates the sorcerer and enchantress from the Ancient Walker's message, but is placed under a spell to do their bidding. He is saved by the crusader Sir Connery, and defeats the duo before leaving on the next step of his quest.
So, yeah, a majority of this story is just flashback that's kind of told out of order. And then Knuckles just thinking about things. And they make a big deal about, oh, he's so persistent. But, like, what is he going to do? All he could do is wait.
Right.
Yeah, he's just being mind-controlled to do, like, boring chores for the boob rabbit. And
Rabbits.
there's something, like, uncomfortably fetishy about this, especially in the panel where he has to wash her feet. I don't like it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's something weirdly, there's something here.
I'm not going to dwell on it. But
That's
they
probably for
recap
the
the
best.
whole of Knuckles' journey up to this point, but there's nothing all that, like, necessary or interesting about it. He's just searching for a sword, and yet again, he doesn't find the sword.
Knuckles is really good at not finding what he's looking for.
It's because this is before he had his Sonic Adventure radar.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. There you go.
Even though he doesn't do a whole lot, I do like the little bit where Knuckles is like, ha, you magician with your cool magic. I'll trick you with some sleight of hand. Like, that's perfect.
But I never thought of Knuckles as an accomplished magician.
Yes, true. I don't know. Honestly, like, going on this whole quest and having to, like, think about, lore and stuff, myths and legends, like when he has to recognize the fictional creatures and all that from before.
Sure.
It seems a little out of place for Knuckles in general.
Definitely. Well, and speaking of out of place, can we talk about fucking BoJack Horse guy here, Sir Connery? There's something up with his face. It looks wrong in almost every panel that
I think part of the problem to me is he's a little too realistic.
I'm trying to think, have we had any kind of echoing character in Sonic before this? I don't think so.
Have there been any since us?
Not really. Like, I'm trying to think, I can think of, like, a donkey guy probably. No, I'm thinking of a guy from fucking Agretzko. That's not Sonic. So, yeah, no, I don't think so.
Honestly, you brought up the designs of characters twice now. All the, like, people that Knuckles has to find on his quest don't really look right, in my opinion.
That's fair.
It's not that far off of Sonic style otherwise, or at least the style of this comic, but
yeah,
it sticks out. And no, that there's nothing here. It's just more drag on. He has to find the sword. You could take the frigging comic where Knuckles is assigned to find the sword, and you could skip everything between that and them actually getting the sword, and you would miss nothing.
You would miss that Tails has a relative who was like a royal magician. That's like important lore.
I'm pretty sure they will reintroduce that guy as if you had never fucking met him before in a later comic anyway.
But then when the editors like remember him from that thing, then you'll be like, "What? I missed the thing."
It's all right. It's all right. Anyway, that's the end of that. So weird. Let's move on here to Sonic number 46, which I think has a great cover, even though it gives me seriously bad vibes, because, oh god, Sonic versus Geoffrey.
Oh, it's a good cover, but, like...
The comic itself is not actually that bad, I would say. It's got some problems, but it's just a case of, like, the immediate, like, knee-jerk reaction is, oh no.
100%.
The story itself, though, is Countdown to Armageddon, written by Penders and Fulop. I'm just going to say Fulop from now on, and drawn by Nelson Ortega, who I don't think has drawn any comics up to this point. His art is alright, I think. But, suspicions of a traitor breed distrust and conflict among the freedom fighters. Sonic and Antoine get into a scrap with Geoffrey after he starts making accusations. So we start off here with the revelation that we haven't had up to this point.
Yeah, they left it out on purpose from that story where the king was getting crystallized and had flashbacks, and instead put it here that Chuck created the roboticizer.
Right.
I like that on top of that, they do an excellent way of wrapping together the comic continuity from early in the miniseries and Sad AM with being like, oh, Chuck was ashamed of what he had created, and he became a humble chili dog salesman. That is just perfect.
Yeah.
Well, and they also use it to fill in some of the blanks of the world building by saying that Sonic's parents fought in the war, and his dad was too injured in the war, and so they used the roboticizer to try and keep him alive. So Sonic's dad was the first roboticization. I don't know, I just think that that's an interesting thing, which we'll get more of this guy. His name is Jules, I don't think they say it right now. But me and Bruce had a laugh about this a while back where, this is Chuck's memory, and it turns out that after this first page, we see that he's projecting it onto a wall through his eyes. And Sonic just has no reaction to this. No reaction to learning that his dad was the first person to ever be roboticized, and that Chuck built it.
He has no reaction to any of this other than, wow, Uncle Chuck, that's way past cool. How you doing it? He's more concerned about the eye projection than his father being roboticized.
It's kind of weird. At this point in the story, Chuck is like, I gotta get all this off my chest. But, like, no one seems to care all that much.
They're all like, yeah, that's fine. Don't worry about it, Chuck.
No, you're on the right track, because it's not like the other characters blame Chuck for it.
Sure.
So I suppose that's textual. I suppose that's not us misinterpreting anything. But we have our little... We're, like, gathered around the campfire. It's weird because we see them like indoors apparently at the start, but then the next time we see them they're just out camping.
I'm not sure how that works. Yeah,
I guess it's just a question of why. I guess Dulcie wasn't there before. No, she was there before. Okay, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it looks like they were going to meet up with someone. Yeah, they are going to meet up with someone. So I have to imagine that he showed them this, like, oh, gotta go, and then they kept like talking on the way or something.
It is weird because it would make sense if they came out here to meet up with the wolf pack who shows up here, but the way that they say it, it sounds like them showing up as a surprise.
Oh yeah, okay. So I guess everyone just happens to meet up here. I don't know. I
Yeah.
think the writers just messed up, and I'm not covering for them this time.
Yeah, well, because we're heading towards issue 50, which is, their version of the Sad AM ending, where a bunch of great freedom fighter groups get together and attack Robotropolis. So it's like we're trying to do the same thing, but it's like it's been Google translated, and you've lost part of the intention.
Yeah, speaking of Sad AM, something really surreal happens here at the start of page 2. There's an editor's note that does not reference a prior issue. No. It references Sad AM, which is like, whoa, wait a second. Are you telling me that Sad AM is canon to the comics? That doesn't make any sense. Or maybe just the episode that the Wolfpack is from. That doesn't make any sense either.
I assume it's more just to say, hey, this is where these guys are from since they haven't shown up in the comics yet.
But Sally knows them already. How?
I'm not surprised.
Okay.
Sally...
Okay.
That's a good point.
Okay. Readers at the time, that would make sense. It would be weird to be confused, or it would be weird to see this because it would be confusing and everything else has been relatively self-contained and explained. In the present day, Sonic issue number 113, in fact, is an adaptation of the Sad AM episode. But technically, yes, the Sad AM is canon. The Sad AM episode is canon by way of having been adapted into a comic like 7 years after this one.
Well, until that happens, the Sad AM episode in question features a Doomsday Project, which does not exist in the comics. So it doesn't work. It just doesn't work until they adapt it later. But I guess that was the idea, and they just weren't thinking. It's just weird to lean on the show when usually they lean on actual material and re-explain something if they bring it into the comics.
Yeah. We also get the first member of the Wolfpack that has a name other than Lupe. In the show, it's Lupe and all the others. In this one, it's Lupe, all the others, and also Drago.
And you know that he's already sus because he has his own name.
That's the thing that I keep thinking about, is the idea that, like, if you were reading this comic, like, when I was reading this, I was thinking, okay, they say that they're hunting down a traitor, and I think they want you to suspect Geoffrey because he's a suspicious bitch. Right. But the fact that they immediately introduce a totally different character, that is to say, a different character that's not Lupe because she's from the show, the fact that they immediately introduce Drago is like, oh, he did it.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, when I was reading these comics, I was like, oh, everyone's a traitor. Geoffrey's a traitor. Drago is a traitor. I mean, Chuck isn't a traitor. They're framing him.
Well, yeah, he's too much of a Chad, but I don't know. I suppose that's the difference, is that if you were reading this as a kid, you wouldn't necessarily suspect Drago. Mostly because you probably wouldn't remember who the fuck he is, because he's not a Sonic character normally. But
fair enough.
Maybe I'm just suspecting Geoffrey because he keeps fucking kissing Sally and it's still creepy, and I don't think you're supposed to believe that it's creepy.
Geoffrey looks like he's sucking on Sally's face, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, no. He just has the most prick expressions throughout this whole issue. Which, to be fair, on the next couple of pages, Sonic and Antoine both get to punch him in the face, which is a-okay by me.
Yeah, I don't know. Are you saying he wasn't supposed to be completely unlikable? Because he really is. Like, now he's accusing Chuck of being a traitor. I'm like, how dare you? You've just insulted one of the most perfect characters in these comics.
Well, obviously he is meant to be in the wrong here, but I think that Geoffrey on the whole is a character that Penders intended for people to think was cool, because he's a secret agent and he's always kissing the female lead, and you don't necessarily know that he's a man in his 20s when he does that. We do, but...
That brings a question then that we have no way of answering unless someone comments. I'm curious what people's thoughts on Geoffrey were when these comics were actually running, because I'd be very curious to see if the general agreement or the people generally agree with us that Geoffrey's creepy and comes off as sus. I can't use a better word than suspicious.
I think that would still be biased in favor of whatever the editor decided to print. But I know that opinions on this guy have always been divided to some extent.
Okay, makes sense.
Well, that was the intention.
Yes,
They
yeah.
were trying to create a fire on purpose.
For this
Sure.
comic, certainly.
Right.
Well, I mean, in general, because it's like, oh, who's Sally gonna
Well, yeah,
choose
yeah.
or whatever.
Well, but I think they were much more intending for Geoffrey to be some kind of legitimate option there than to just come off like a fucking pedophile.
Right, but
Yeah.
what's the point of a shipping war if it isn't a war where people take both sides? Is what I'm saying.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, you mentioned it before, but yeah, when I was reading these comics, Geoffrey and Sonic fight, and Geoffrey looks like he's gonna kill Sonic or something. And then so completely out of nowhere, Antoine is like, "Hey, that's enough!" Smacks Geoffrey like, "Heck yeah! I did not expect a righteous Antoine moment in this comic, but I am all for it."
I love
Chad Twan.
I love
Yeah.
that he says the hedgehog may be an imbecile like you, but even he doesn't deserve death. There's some grudging respect for Sonic there.
Antoine is the star of the show in this issue, and I am here
Yes.
for it. We get to see his entire backstory, how he wanted to be a member of the Royal Guard, but it got cut off by the coup. He beats up
Geoffrey.
more. We see that he had this whole stupid thing with trying to get with Sally, but he gave up on it, and this is also the official issue where he and Bunny become a thing.
Yeah, so it felt hinted at before, but now
Yeah, it's
now they
very much
confirm it
hinted
for
at.
anyone who missed
Yeah.
it before. It's almost like Antoine is like covering for when he completely was a jerk on the issue after Mecha Madness. And yeah, I don't really have a whole lot more to say other than I like Antoine.
So
Yeah.
the only thing I can really say is Antoine explaining his backstory and how it completely invalidate everything Geoffrey has told them up to this point about his own backstory. It kind of goes with the way I was viewing Geoffrey, that if he's the head of Secret Service, wouldn't Sally have already known he existed? But no,
Yeah.
no one seems to know who Geoffrey was until he showed up with his own freedom fighters.
Yeah, and let it be known that even as a hero, Geoffrey is a liar. So it makes sense.
Yeah. So I like that Antoine's entire diatribe is pointing out exactly why his story is inconsistent. I love it.
No, good on Antoine for this entire
Hell
fucking
yeah.
bit. I will say, as much as I like Antoine and Bunny as a couple, everything surrounding it and this issue, I'm not sure how I feel about, because it's a very sappy scene where she kisses him, and the art does not make it look great.
Yeah.
She has a really low-set mouth in the heart-shaped panel, which, I don't know.
It would be better if the art was better.
Yeah.
But I think the scene itself is fine. It's
a bit
nice,
odd. It's a bit odd because at the start of the issue, I think Nelson Ortega is doing a pretty good job. But like the moment that Sonic punches Geoffrey and his head is giant in that panel for some reason, things take a bit of a downward turn.
A little bit, yeah.
Maybe he was rushed.
Probably.
But regardless of that, Drago disappears and then reappears later, and they're like, "Where have you been?" And so it's like, "Oh yeah, he's the real traitor. Got it."
Right.
Yeah, and they kind of cap it off like, "Oh, what's gonna happen? What's going on? Who's the real traitor?" and all that. And at this point, I realized, hey, wait a minute. Like, this was mostly just people coming and talking. Like, I mean, some people punched each other, and heck yeah, but this was mostly like, character interactions and like exposition, and yet I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think they did a good job, whereas often they struggle with that.
Yeah, this is the first time where the kind of soap opera-y writing hasn't felt like a hindrance, but actually made it interesting.
Well, you have drama because you know that somebody's going to try to kill somebody else.
Right.
And because this is the calm before the storm, because issue 50 is next week. Which makes it all the more ironic that then they kind of undercut that with the other story in this issue, Knuckles' Quest 4, A Goat, a Raven, and a Swan Song, which is the final part of Knuckles' Quest. Which, it is the final part, which means that we do actually have a conclusion, but it's still boring.
I feel like these Knuckles Quest comics would have been better off expanded into like an actual miniseries like Sonic Quest.
Maybe. I'm noticing that I don't even have a description, but you don't need one. It's just Knuckles finds the guys that are supposed to have the sword, and then he has to fight some stuff.
Basically.
and then he does get the sword. As you said, this was the conclusion. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it would have hurt. Hopefully it wouldn't have just been like more of the same if it was in a mini series.
I think that it should not have been. It should not have been a mini series. It should have been one issue that was the quest for the sword.
I think it would have been better do a special, say like Knuckles quest, the quest for the sword, or whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
That could have expanded upon all these stories a lot more instead of them being like. It
could have cut the fat out and expanded on what actually mattered.
Right, because despite each of these being like maximum of like 5 pages, they have a lot of filler in them still. They could easily be like 2 or 3 pages.
Well, and I don't know, it's still weird because he crashes this bird and this goat's like Magic the Gathering roleplay or whatever, and they for some reason have a robotic gorilla to sick on him and Archimedes.
So no, it's a metal golem, which I actually think that's kind of funny. Like play on the fact that normally you'd expect that to be a robot, but no, it's just like animated with magic.
Right,
it has glowing red eyes.
Okay, maybe it was a
robot. Call it a metal golem.
I know, but it's
maybe it was a robot that its battery stopped working and they're powering it through magic now. I don't know.
Sure, you know what? Let's go with that.
It wouldn't be an episode talking about the Sonic comics if we don't come up with some kind of headcanon.
I suppose not.
While we're talking about weird details, you didn't mention that the goat guy is not actually a goat guy. He's like the sword disguised, and they're like, where's the real whatever this guy's name is, Democles the Elder? And I'm like, am I supposed to care?
Yeah, that's a good question.
You know what? It's another fucking biblical reference because the sword of Damocles, and his name is Damocles, and he is a sword.
Huh? Yeah, that's a good point.
And yeah, no, I don't know what the friggin' point of any of this was.
I guess my question also is: are we actually going to meet Damocles the Elder at any point, or was that absolutely
just some
guy? Okay?
and all of this
I'm actually kind of surprised.
All of this being a quest for King Acorn's sword. This is the Sword of Acorns, which is, a royal artifact or whatever. But I think King Acorn just had it before now, which means that it's only been missing for a few years.
What's your point?
Well, just that there's this entire quest to get it with multiple guys you have to talk to and things you have to fight. How did it get here? Do royal quests just manifest from it?
Well, there's a pretty simple explanation. It was a powerful magical artifact. Robotnik ransacked everything. This Raven jerk dude was like, oh, I'll sneak in and steal that while everything is falling apart. And then the problem was that Knuckles was brought by Tails to the Ancient Walkers for help, and they're like, we're not going to give you a straight answer. We're going to put you on this whole quest.
Oh, so you're saying that they just intentionally wasted his time when he could have come straight here.
100%.
So he just had to talk to this guy's friends of friends of friends.
Basically.
All right, then.
Well, this brings us to the end of tonight, but it also brings us to a gimmick I wanted to start, which is Sonic Points and Knuckles Points. For each episode that we have Sonic Comics and Knuckles Comics, because there's 32 issues of Knuckles Comics, so we're going to be on those for a while, I have decided we're going to rank whether Sonic had the better issues or Knuckles had the better issues. Doesn't matter who the stars of each story are. We just have to decide which comic book is better for the ones that we read.
Well, I mean, there's 3 versus 2, so that's not really even.
But any of those stories could lower your personal rating for those comics.
Okay.
For example, I think that Sonic was better this week. Even though it only had 2 comics, I think that the main story in issue 46 is compelling enough that I would say it wins out over the rest of it alone.
Well, yeah, it's hard to say, I think, because 45 is pretty dull. And yeah, but 46 is a total standout among everything we've covered tonight. I mean, the Dark Legion was more consistent, I think, versus the 2 Sonic comics. So it's really kind of how you weigh it.
And that's why I'm just saying personal enjoyment.
Okay. I guess I gotta give my point to Sonic as well. The Echidna lore and the Knuckles comics was a little too much for me to follow initially, and it kind of dampened my enjoyment of the issues overall.
Sure.
So yeah, I'll give it to Sonic.
Yeah, I'll give my point to Sonic as well. I feel like we're just sort of wandering aimlessly on this really long storyline about stupid people in the past that act in really ridiculous ways with Knuckles. But with Sonic, I feel like we're getting somewhere. We're building up to something, and it'll
Yeah.
actually pay off. I'm not convinced the Knuckles stuff is going to go anywhere. So I'll give it to Sonic.
All right. Well, we'll see
Yeah.
how that changes in the future. It's not going to be next time, though, because next time we have the first Sonic Super Special. Although, like the Knuckles comics, it was just, marketed as another 48-page special. It just retroactively became the first Super Special. So we're doing the first Sonic Super Special, Battle Royale. Or, sorry, it's called Battle of Royal, not Royale. But we are also doing 4 more Sonic issues, and those 4 issues are the Endgame arc. One of the most remembered arcs of Archie Sonic.
Rightfully so.
There is a lot of interesting stuff in there. I'm wondering how it's going to measure up after so many years of having both good and bad things to say about it, honestly. But that is going to be it for tonight. So I hope everybody enjoyed. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, we'd love it if you share, comment, and subscribe, and you can reach us at deepdivezonepod@gmail.com or at deepdivezone on Twitter. Have a great night. We'll see you next week, and don't die like some people will next week.
Oh.
Solid advice.
Later.